So far in this series, we have built up our theme to be like this. We have a beautiful ceiling with a lot of props. We have decorated walls with corner tiles. Now we're going to complete this theme by populating the ground with props. Open up your theme file, and now we'll start populating the ground props, and we'll use the same concept we've used before. Populate ground slot markers all around the ground, and then we'll query for our marker for free slots, and if we do consume them, then we want to remove those free slots so others don't overlap on it. But here we need an extra consideration. Unlike the ceilings that can be tightly packed, we want certain areas to be free, so that, for example, we cannot have a container over here, and because that would block the path. We cannot have a prop next to the door or next to an opening like this, because that would block the entire place. So we can easily put in the rules to avoid all of this, and we can build on smaller rules stacked one after the other, and we'll see how to do that. So switch over to the pattern matcher. Start by creating a new rule, and let's call it ground scatter free slots, and search for ground. And emit a marker. Okay, so now let's create this to visualize it. Go back to the theme editor, right click, dungeon, add marker node, and call it this, and put in this. Let's reset this to 4, reset it to 1. All right, let's start with the most basic rule. We want to have some props or containers right next to the wall. So let's do that. So add and say ground prop 1, ground wall prop 1x1. So here add new rule, marker exists, ground slot, and add new rule, marker exist wall, and so this is gonna match something like this. So let's go ahead and emit a marker. We'll just call it prop 1x1. Let's go to the theme graph, dungeon, new marker node, and let's put in our containers. So I'm gonna select all 3 of these, drag drop, and link them up. So it has taken every one of these. So the pivot for this is somewhere in the center. So real quick, let's close this, switch over to dungeon theme, and select any one of these, double click that, click edit transform. All right, and maybe add a bit of rotation as well to this. So select this node, and we are going to add a procedural transform logic. So these are built-in stuff. You can all right, so click on this plus, and there are a few where you can use to randomly rotate, for example. So I have a rotation range, random rotate logic, and this is gonna rotate like this. So we want to rotate only along the Z, so let's make this 0, let's make this 0, and maybe rotate -5 to +5, so that it removes the perfection and adds a bit of variation. So to start with, we don't want so many of these, so we can always go ahead and reduce the probability of this from here, reduce this from here, or we can do it from the rule itself. So I'm going to quit from here, go back, selection, and head over to your theme file. All right, so before we can reduce the probability from here itself, but I don't want so many of the props here. I'm going to bring it down to say 0.1. We get it only on a few places. 0.5, 0.4, 0.5. And as you can see, there are a few issues, and we are going to see how we could use the pattern matcher to fix it. So for the time being, let's set it to 1, so we catch all the ones. So what are the ones that we do not want? We do not want anything that has a let's say that has a wall next to it, right? So let's say this add new rule and contains marker exists, door. We do not want the door here, so let's negate that and add it. So we don't want it to, we don't want a door, we don't want this to spawn if there's a door here. Copy rule, paste rule, and paste rule, paste rule. All right, and we also do not want it if we have a door here. And we also don't want a door here. All exists and no. So we have a wall, but we make sure we do not have a door, and hook that in. This is going to go away. All right, so now, so that took care of it. However, we have this edge. It does not have a wall here, right? It does not have a wall, but it does have a wall on the upper floor. So it would consider this edge as a wall, containing a wall as well. So this passed and work. So we could just copy this, copy rule, paste one behind because there's a door behind it. Paste, and then have it here. However, this assumes that there is a door behind it, and if you don't have a door behind it and it's a large corridor with an opening, this is not going to work. So it's not very robust. Let's get rid of this and remove this. All right, so now here I'm checking for a wall and not a door, and that check is returning true for this, but the wall is up over here. I want to make sure, I want this rule to succeed only if the wall is in elevation 0, so that we can attach it, but this video is not desirable to have it here. So the check that the place where we make the check where wall exists, we have a elevation, required elevation, and if set to 0, it's gonna check whether the wall exists, and you can give a bunch of elevations here, and it has to exist in those elevations. and since we've given 0, it checked for a wall over here and it did not find it, so the rule did not succeed. Okay, so now another thing we don't want is yeah, so this worked, and so maybe if you have a wall here, maybe don't add a prop if you have a wall here and here. So let's real quick add a rule here, add new rule. So I'm going to use marker list exist and add wall and door. We don't want walls or doors here, so negate that. And this is an edge like this, so right click, copy rule, paste rule, and now this didn't work because our wall marker was removed by this corner tile. So we are going to move these things up, all the way up to the top, and move this as a second. And if you see that it doesn't build, just hit build. There are some optimization where it doesn't build the whole thing. Just move this around and move it back in to force a rebuild. Alright, so we saw that it did not insert it here, and that's great. That works. Now when I insert it here, I want to get rid of the ground slot here. So remove. Okay. Now this is fine. If you reduce the, as long as your assets are do have some space and don't take the full tile, which is preferable, you can have this, or you can give another rule here where you go ahead and remove the ground slot from here, here, and here as well, so that new stuff does not spawn here. So I'll show you real quick. Add a new rule and say remove marker ground slot, and copy and paste. And these things really will remove anything from here and here after they've been inserted. You want to go aggressive, you can even put it here, but then that removes a lot of space for us to work with and insert things. But that's an option, and really depends on your art asset, on what you have and how much you want to remove. And of course this is not the only rule you are going to build on this, so there are many rules that come below this, and you can have larger and larger rules that that create different kind of meshes. Now what we can do is switch back to this and select this node, Control C, copy, and Control V, paste it again here, and I want to move this up by another 400 units. So it's already 200, add 400, make it 600, but this never executes because once this is inserted it stops. So let's uncheck that so that we move to the next one, and we're stacking two containers on top of each other, which is great. However, we have a problem here. We really don't want them to stack on these places, and especially on these places, because that's undesirable. We want this second node to execute only if the elevation is beyond a certain height. So it's all fine over here, but undesirable over here. So we're just going to add a simple rule. So let's do that. So the second node, so how would we do this? This is the node that stacks on top, so let's make this as the first node, and also remove the stop if selected. so both are going to execute anyway, right? So but we can add a condition over here and go to the selection logic and add a elevation range or max elevation greater than. So for ground floor, max elevation would be 1, that's the elevation of the ceiling, and this would be 2. So we want this to show up only if it's greater than 2. So let's put in that number, and if you go back here, we still get it here. All right, now let's go ahead and reduce the probability of this rule, and you see that these things are getting on the way. If you really don't want this, you can just click this button. It just brings it down. So the rule is still there, it's just visual. Get it out of the way. You will not be able to see what's written on it like this, but it helps show the other important stuff, and you can always click on it to see what it does. So let's get the probability down. Let's select this and maybe 0.3, and this is what we have. Okay. All right, now let's create another rule and bring this up to this. Now we want this above the above the 1x1. Call this 2x2. So I want a 2x2 tile somewhere around the wall over here. So we'll look for 2 walls and 4 ground tiles. So right click, add new rule, and select this. Marker exists. Search for ground slot. Copy, paste, and paste 2 more times. So we have a 4x4 space for it. And add a new rule. And we will search for marker exists. Make sure it's a wall, and that wall has to be in elevation 0. And also make sure we don't have a door here. All right, copy and paste. And when that happens, we want to insert it. So let's get rid of the ground slot so that we take over it. And for some reason this is not enabled. Let's enable this. And finally, let's go ahead and emit it out. Let's emit from here, and then we have to shift it around. So emit marker, call it prop 2x2. Head back to the theme graph and create a marker with that name. Okay. And here I want to use this mesh. There is There is this little assembly I've made. We'll go to viewport. It's a little raised platform, and it makes it look like we have multi-level variation. So let's drop that in and put this. Okay. And we need to adjust the transform. So we emit here, so it's going to be like this. We have to move it down by 400. So 400 minus 400. Let's go to another place where we can see this more clearly. So minus 400. Minus 400. Okay. So let me open this up. Look at the this would have the pivot. So you have to move it by minus 400. Yes. Okay. Now we want free slots all around this place before we insert them. So we are going to put in that rule. So condition, add new rule, marker access free, marker access ground slot. And when we do that, all of these, let me remove this for now. Okay, now let's see how this works. You want a ground slot here, copy, paste. And we also want them here. So we make sure that this is surrounded by free space. All right, so it's looking good. Now, if you want to make sure that we don't get any props over here, this is fine because a character can move through it, because we've designed the 1x1 props to be to have some space for us to move in. However, if you don't like it, just go ahead and remove the ground slot from here. And that will take care of that. All right, so this is looking good. Now we do have a problem here, just like the containers we've seen previously. We might want to replace this with another asset, so we have just that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I have another asset that is, I'll show you this. That simply goes down rather than going up. All right, so let's drop in this asset onto our prop. Get up, and you see the same transform, minus 400, and maybe bring this down by minus 200. All right. Now we see that we have ceiling, the ground tiles, and they're getting in the way. Now these meshes, they already have uh, their own ground tiles, so we don't really need this, and we're gonna get rid of them from the pattern itself. So select this, remove marker, ground. Remember, we're not removing the ground slot, we're removing the ground itself that is responsible for adding the mesh. So remove. Perfect. All right, switch over to the theme graph. Let's look around, and this is showing everywhere, and we want it to show up only when the max elevation is 1. Other times we can use this other one. So let's put in a rule over here. Let's go to selection logic, add max elevation greater than, so if max elevation less than 1, so less than 2, then we use this, because in this the max elevation is 1. So when it is less than 2, we go for this, otherwise we have this. So you can use this method to insert a lot of other meshes. We have so many different props, and you can experiment and play with them and really populate your scene. You might want to reduce the probability of this to maybe 0.2 or 0.1 and just play around with these till it feels right. And with that, the Foundry theme is complete. Over the series, you've learned the core tools, the theme editor for mapping meshes to markers, interactive mode for fast iteration, selection rules for conditional logic, and pattern matcher for context-aware placement across multiple tiles. The same technique applies to any theme you build, be it sci-fi, fantasy, horror, whatever. The workflow stays the same. See you in the next one.